Hi, I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org, and today I want to do a video in response to a comment I got in the last video that I did about whether or not it's possible to truly and effectively and permanently reverse a hiatal hernia. And I hope this video will give hope to those of you out there who are suffering of a hiatal hernia, and maybe you haven't even heard of this idea that you could reverse a hiatal hernia on your own, that you could remedy this issue and remedy the symptoms that the issue causes. So the comment was, the person commented that her doctor said that you could not reverse a hiatal hernia. And then I went back and actually within the hiatal hernia support group, and actually there was a post about that topic and a lot of comments, and I read through that as well just the other day, and it really got me to thinking that, well, it just helped me to understand what you all are talking about when you say that you can't reverse a hiatal hernia. And so the answer to the question or the comment is really, it's yes and no. If you are just going to maybe make a few changes to your diet and get a little bit of relief, then no, that's not reversing your hiatal hernia. If you're going to do a few heel drops, or maybe, you know, massage your stomach occasionally and get a little bit of relief, no, that is not reversing, fully reversing and permanently reversing your hiatal hernia. Those are just things you're doing to kind of manage your condition and maybe get a little bit of relief. Now, when we talk about effectively and permanently reversing a hiatal hernia, this needs to be thought of in a very comprehensive way, right? A very holistic way, which means we're doing things that are going to support that reversal. We're gonna do those things consistently and maybe even long term. So one example is, you know, I went on a plant-based diet years ago in a desperate attempt to try to remedy this issue, and it didn't. It made it better, but it didn't remedy the anatomical issue of the hiatal hernia, right? So it helped, but it didn't reverse my hiatal hernia. And I'm still on the diet though. It's been 4.5 years later, and I'm still on the diet because I love it. I was talking the other day about my chronic allergies and asthma, and so this is just one way to kind of compare the two. So I have had chronic allergies and asthma since I was a child. Okay, I am now symptom-free. I am symptom-free, I am medication-free. I used to take steroid inhalers, I puffed on fast-acting inhalers all the time. I was always symptomatic, and now I am not. Why? Because I went on a plant-based diet, and because I changed my food, those allergies and asthma just went away. And I know that can be hard to kind of see the connection. It was really hard for me in the beginning as well. But I understand the connection now. And the point I'm trying to make is, just because I am symptom-free now and medication-free, it doesn't mean that if I were to go back to the way I used to eat, that all of those symptoms wouldn't come back. Of course they would. Of course they would. So I was able to overcome the symptoms of chronic allergies and asthma. I was able to become a much healthier, happy person. I was able to get off of all those medications. But does that mean it's a permanent fix just because I fixed it? No, I could revert back to that old way of living, those old symptoms, simply by going back to the way I used to eat. And so the same can be said for a hiatal hernia. And so does that mean we have to manage the reversal of our hiatal hernia for the rest of our lives? Well, that's one way to put it. Certainly, I don't plan to ever change my diet and go back to eating the way I used to. But I don't think of my diet as any form of management. I think of it as a blessing. I think of it as winning the lottery, discovering a whole foods plant-based diet. I really do. It's completely changed my life, and it's why I talk about it on here so much. But it did not reverse my hiatal hernia. It was not enough. And so that's why I teach more. That's why I teach holistic. That's why I teach the comprehensive method that I use to reverse my hiatal hernia, and diet was just a part of that. So the answer to the comment is, again, it's yes and no. If you just are planning to, you know, do one or two things to kind of manage your hernia, that is one thing. But if you're willing to comprehensively reverse your hiatal hernia. And what does that mean? So it might mean you need to make changes to your diet, but it also means you need to learn how to master the ability to move your stomach down, to move it down and out of that herniated position. So I always do this. If you're watching for the first time, this represents the stomach and the diaphragm. So when you have a hernia, your stomach's lodged in your diaphragm, right? So you have to master the ability to move that stomach down, okay? And you can totally do it. It's not that hard. I teach a very safe, gentle, and slow process of getting that stomach down. Why? Because yeah, you can go to a chiropractor and have them aggressively move your stomach down, but you have to learn what's contributing and supporting to that herniation. Okay, you have to learn what you are doing that supports the intragastric pressure that always is pushing your stomach up. You need to make those changes as well. Those are some many times easy things that you can do, these lifestyle changes that will support moving your stomach down and that will support pushing your stomach up. So that's part of that holistic therapy as well, addressing the things that are causing that pressure. So one is learning how to move the stomach down, and two is learning what it takes to strengthen your diaphragm. So if this is your diaphragm, the dome-shaped muscle that sits under your rib cage, there's a hole known as your hiatus in your diaphragm. So your esophagus comes up through that hole, and when you have a hernia, your stomach comes up through the hole. And so we have to learn the hiatal hernia specific exercises. Okay, and I say that because traditional diaphragmatic exercise to strengthen the diaphragm supports pushing the stomach up. Okay, when you do those exercises, it creates intragastric pressure and it pushes the stomach up into the diaphragm. So if you're trying to move your stomach down and strengthen your diaphragm, but you're pushing your stomach up, then that goes against what you're trying to do. So what I teach is a method, it's a hiatal hernia specific method of strengthening that diaphragm that supports moving the stomach down instead of supports pushing the stomach up. So you've got to learn how to move the stomach down, and you've got to learn the exercises that strengthen your diaphragm. And I just did a whole video about the diaphragm. And this is really important because once you clearly understand that your diaphragm is a dome of skeletal muscle with a hole in it that needs to be tightened, right? Because we want to get that stomach down, but we want to keep it from going back up again, right? Because any little bit of a pressure, if you've got a really large hiatus, is going to push that stomach back up again. So you've got to do the exercise. You've got to do the exercise that's going to tighten that hole. So it's a nice, tight, little small hole. And how do we do that? Well, like any muscle, when we exercise it, like if I were to do some bicep curls, what happens to the fibers of the muscle in the bicep? They tear and they break down, and then they repair and they rebuild. That's how we get stronger. That's how we build muscle. So the muscles tear and they break down, and then they repair and they build up. And when they rebuild thicker, bulkier, tighter, stronger. Okay, and so that's what we want for the diaphragm. We want that muscle to get bulkier, tighter, stronger, so that that stomach can't push through it again. So if you can learn those things, and the reason that diet is so important, yes, I talk about anatomically moving the stomach down, and yes, I talk about anatomically strengthening the diaphragm, but if you have any type of gastric condition, if you've been diagnosed with gastritis, esophagitis, GERD, IBS, IBD, Crohn's, anything like that, that means that your digestive system is in a state of chronic inflammation, okay? And if you are going to start pulling your stomach down and strengthening your diaphragm when all of those tissues are inflamed, then it's going to be really difficult. It's going to be nearly impossible. So you've got to do what it takes to get that inflammation down. And that's why I promote a whole foods plant-based diet, because that's the quickest, bestest, most effective way that you can heal the gut and get that inflammation to go away. Okay, so that's why I always encourage people to investigate and research plant-based nutrition. I give a lot of free resources and free and paid resources. There's just a ton of information out there online about plant-based diets. So do a little bit of research and take a 30-day challenge just to see what it will do for you. It may not help you overcome the symptoms that are created by your hiatal hernia. For some people it does. For some people with itty bitty hiatal hernias, just getting that inflammation down, everything settles down and rests back into its normal position. But more than likely, most of us have hernias where the stomach is lodged in the diaphragm. And so we've got, and when it lodges itself in the diaphragm, attachments are created, adhesions are created, and it just kind of makes its home there. Yeah, it'll slide. It'll slide because your diaphragm is always moving with every breath. So it'll slide up and down, and all that does is just create more friction and agitation of the tissues of the diaphragm, the tissues of the stomach, the vagus nerve. So it'll slide for most people, it'll move, but for most people, getting that stomach down and out effectively out of the diaphragm, it takes a daily consistent exercise. All right. So I hope that clears it up. Can you reverse a hiatal hernia permanently? Let me give you my experience. So am I symptomatic? No, I'm not. Thank God. Do I occasionally experience symptoms? Yeah, I do. Every now and then I'll feel a little nauseous. I'll get a little bit of indigestion. And all I have to do is ask myself, oh, wait a minute, I have indigestion. What are my abs doing right now? What are my abdominal muscles doing right now? And 100% of the time they're pulled in tight. Okay? So this is just a natural response mechanism. Our body's natural response mechanism to stress is to contract the muscles, right? And the ab muscles pull in, and when that happens, it creates intragastric pressure within your abdominal cavity, and it pushes your stomach up against the diaphragm. And even if your stomach has become unherniated, if it's pushing against the diaphragm, you can experience the same symptoms of having a hernia. It's what I call a pre-hiatal hernia, which isn't a real thing, but it's just before, you know, if your stomach's just pushing against your diaphragm, but it hasn't popped through yet, it's just pushing against. I was just talking about this the other day, how in Dr. Michael Greger was talking about plant-based communities in Africa. They see a 1 in 1,000 people with a hiatal hernia in plant-based communities in Africa. 1 in 1,000. It's 1 in 5 in the U.S. people have a hiatal hernia. And when we look at the difference in the images, so the x-ray from like a barium swallow test, something like that, in Africa, the stomachs hang out way down here underneath the diaphragm. But in the U.S., they're almost always, even if they don't have a hiatal hernia, the stomach is located right up here, pressed against the diaphragm. Okay, and so why is that? It's from intra-abdominal pressure that's created by a variety of different things. So you have to figure out what you're doing that creates that pressure. And I teach this. I think I just did a video not that long ago about the 18 different forms of intra-abdominal pressure. And 14 out of the 18 are things that we can control. Isn't that great news? That's such good news that we actually have some control over this condition. So yeah, my experience, if I notice that I'm pulling in my abs, and why would I pull in my abs? Sometimes I'll be brushing my teeth and I'll get a little nauseous and I'll think, okay, I'm sucking in my belly. Why am I sucking in my belly? Well, I'm getting ready for my day and I'm thinking about all the things I have to do and I'm a little bit stressed. I might not feel stressed, or I'll be driving my car down the freeway and I'll notice I get a little nauseous. And I'll notice my abs are pulled in tight. Why are my abs pulled in tight? I don't feel stressed, but I'm driving down the freeway. So I mean, that's putting your life at risk when you're out there on that freeway. So it begins to make sense how there's this connection between the stress and the symptoms, because when we're agitated, when we're angry, when we're frustrated, when we're scared, even if we're cold, those abdominal muscles can pull in, and that creates a situation of what's known as low volume, high pressure. So we have increased pressure within that cavity and the stomach is getting pushed up and crowded against the diaphragm. So that's it. I hope that clears that up a little bit. So the answer is, again, is yes and no, but yes, you can reverse a hiatal hernia permanently. You can get it down and you can strengthen that diaphragm so it won't pop up through again. And how do I know that mine is not coming back up into the diaphragm? Well, I don't have, I haven't had a test done. I don't have the proof to prove that, and I will never have that test done again. I would never put myself through another barium swallow for no reason. I am symptom-free and I feel great, but I never get the sharp pain that I used to get at the herniated site. I haven't had that for many, many, many months. So while yes, my stomach does still push against the diaphragm and cause that friction, it can cause, I'm not really sure exactly why I start to become, nauseous. Maybe it has something to do with, cramping the esophagus. Maybe it has to do with that vagus nerve. It could be a lot of things, but all I know is I am able to be aware of it. I'm able to relax my abs when it happens, and the stomach slides back down, and then I get instant relief. Instant relief. Just through that awareness and making that small change of relaxing my abdominal muscles and taking a couple breaths. So that's it for today, guys. I like to come on live and stream live at least once a week about this topic. So if you like this content and you would like more, make sure you like my Facebook page. I'm also on YouTube. You can go to my website, pamfox.org, and in the About Me tab, you can see my credentials. I'm not a doctor, but you'll see my credentials there, and there's also links to my YouTube channel and here to my Facebook fan page. If you'd like to follow me, you just have to go in, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when I go live. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching.